The colonial fleet had been running for 3 years, 7 months, and 14 days. Commander William Adama stood on the bridge of the Battlestar Galactica, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of the Dratus console. Behind him, the ragtag fleet of 43 civilian ships stretched across the darkness of space, humanity's last survivors fleeing from the relentless pursuit of the Cylons. "Dratus contact," Lieutenant Felix Gaida announced, his voice tight with tension. "Multiple signatures bearing 270 Karam 35. Distance, they're close, sir. Too close." Adama's jaw tightened. "IFF? Negative identification, Commander. They don't match any known Cylon signatures, but..." Gaida's fingers flew across his console, his eyes widening. "Sir, I'm reading power signatures unlike anything in our database. These aren't Cylon raiders. They're not colonial either." Colonel Saul Teus moved to Adama's side, his scarred face grim. "Could be another faction, maybe survivors we don't know about." "Or something worse," Adama muttered. He turned to his communications officer. "Lieutenant Douala, open a channel, all frequencies." President Laura Roslin's voice crackled over the wireless from Colonial One. "Commander, what's happening? The civilian ships are picking up the same contacts. People are panicking." "Madam President, we have unknown vessels approaching our position. I'm attempting to make contact now." Adama nodded to Douala. The young officer's hands trembled slightly as she activated the transmission. "Attention unknown vessels, this is the Battlestar Galactica of the Colonial Fleet. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." "We are a refugee convoy seeking safe passage. Repeat, we mean you no harms, but we are prepared to defend ourselves." Static filled the CIC for several agonizing seconds. Then a voice responded, calm, measured, and utterly alien in its clarity. "Battlestar Galactica, this is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. We have detected your fleet and noted unusual energy signatures consistent with spatial anomalies. Are you in distress? Do you require assistance?" The entire CIC fell silent. Adama and Tai exchanged glances, heavy with decades of military experience and recent trauma. Federation, Enterprise, these weren't Cylon designations, but they also weren't colonial. "Captain Picard," Adama responded carefully, "this is Commander William Adama. We are indeed in need of assistance, but I must be frank. We don't know who you are, where we are, or how we got here. Our last known position was in the Ionian Nebula. We were executing a faster-than-light jump to escape hostile forces when something happened." There was a pause before Picard's voice returned, now tinged with concern and curiosity. "Commander Adama, your vessel's technology appears significantly different from our own. Your mention of faster-than-light jump suggests a propulsion system unfamiliar to Federation science. I believe it would be prudent for us to meet in person. Would you be amenable to receiving a diplomatic delegation aboard your vessel?" Adama looked to Tai, who shrugged with his characteristic gruffness. "Could be a trap. Could also be our first piece of good luck in 4 years." President Roslin's voice came through again. "Commander, I recommend we accept. If they wanted to destroy us, they could have done so already. And frankly, we need allies. We need hope." Adama closed his eyes briefly, the weight of 49,000 souls pressing down on his shoulders. When he opened them, his decision was made. "Captain Picard, you may send your delegation. We'll receive you in our port hangar bay. Come unarmed and will extend the same courtesy." "Agreed, Commander. We will transport over in 1 hour. Enterprise out." "Transport over?" Gaeta muttered. "What does that mean?" Adama turned to his crew. "I want security teams positioned throughout the hangar bay. Keep weapons holstered but ready. Ty, you're with me. Starbuck, get your alert fighters ready to launch on my order. If this goes sideways, I want options." Captain Kara Starbuck Thrace nodded from her position near the tactical station. "You got it, old man. Though I gotta say, these guys sound way too polite to be Cylons." "The Cylons looked human too," Adama reminded her darkly, "until they started killing us." The meeting 57 minutes later, Adama stood in the hangar bay, flanked by Colonel Ty and a security detail of 8 Colonial Marines. President Roslin had insisted on being present as well, her elegant composure masking the cancer that was slowly killing her. Dr. Gaius Baltar lurked at the periphery, his brilliant mind already racing with possibilities, while his internal Cylon companion, Number 6, visible only to him, whispered observations and warnings in his ear. "Commander, we're detecting an energy buildup in the center of the hangar," reported a technician over the wireless. "It's unlike anything I've ever seen. No radiation, no heat signature, just pure energy manipulation." "Everyone stand ready," Adama ordered, his hand unconsciously moving toward his sidearm. Then it happened. A column of shimmering light materialized in the center of the hangar, accompanied by a distinctive musical hum. The light resolved into solid forms, 6 humanoid figures coalescing from pure energy. The Colonial Marines raised their weapons instinctively, but Adama raised his hand to stay them. The transporter effect faded, revealing the Federation delegation. At the forefront stood Captain Jean-Luc Picard, a dignified, bald man in a red and black uniform that seemed almost ceremonial in its elegance. Beside him stood a tall, pale-skinned officer with distinctly pointed ears, his eyebrow arched in what might have been curiosity. A woman with dark hair, pulled back in a severe bun, stood ready with a medical tricorder, while a large man with a golden visor covering his eyes examined the hangar with technical interest. 2 security officers in gold uniforms completed the delegation, their posture alert but non-threatening. Picard stepped forward, his hands clearly visible and empty. "Commander Adama, President Roslin, I am Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the Federation Starship Enterprise. May I introduce my senior staff? Commander Spock, my first officer and science officer. Dr. Beverly Crusher, Chief Medical Officer. Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge, Chief Engineer, and Lieutenant Commander Worf, Chief of Security." The Vulcan, Spock, nodded almost imperceptibly. "Fascinating. The molecular structure of this vessel suggests an entirely different technological development path from Federation standard." Adama studied each of them carefully, his military instincts evaluating threats and opportunities simultaneously. These people carried themselves with confidence, but not arrogance. Their technology was clearly advanced. Materializing out of thin air was beyond anything the colonies had achieved, but they presented themselves as diplomats rather than conquerors. "Welcome aboard the Galactica," Adama said finally. "I'll be honest with you, Captain, we're at a disadvantage here. We don't know where we are, we don't know who you are, and we've learned the hard way that trust can be lethal. But we're also desperate, tired, and low on everything, from food to fuel. So I'm willing to listen." Roslin stepped forward, her presidential bearing evident despite her illness. "Captain Picard, Commander Adama speaks for our military, but I speak for our people. We are the last survivors of the 12 colonies of Kobol. Our civilization was destroyed by a race of artificial intelligences we created, the Cylons. We've been running ever since, searching for a legendary planet called Earth. If you can tell us where we are and how we got here, we would be deeply grateful. Picard's expression shifted from diplomatic courtesy to genuine concern. Madam President, Commander, I'm afraid I must share troubling news. According to our sensors and stellar cartography, you are approximately 70,000 light-years from your last known position. You've somehow crossed into what we call the Alpha Quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy. More specifically, you're in Federation space, near the neutral zone bordering the Romulan Star Empire. The silence that followed was deafening. Even Baltar stopped his nervous fidgeting, his face paling as the implication sank in. 70,000 light-years, Ty repeated, his voice hollow. That's impossible. Our FTL drives can jump maybe 10 light-years at a time. Even if we jumped continuously for the entire time we've been running, we couldn't have covered that distance. Spock's eyebrow arched higher. Indeed, Colonel, which suggests that you did not travel here through conventional means. Commander LaForge, what are your initial readings? The engineer with the distinctive visor had been scanning the Galactica with his tricorder throughout the conversation. Captain, I'm detecting residual tachyon particles throughout the hull, concentrated especially around their FTL drive systems. The signature is consistent with a subspace fracture event, similar to what we encountered in the Devron system, but on a much larger scale. Dr. Crusher stepped forward, her medical tricorder trained on the colonial delegation. Captain, I'm also detecting elevated levels of temporal radiation in their biosignatures. It's consistent with passage through some form of temporal anomaly. Adama's hand moved to his sidearm. Temporal? Are you saying we've traveled through time? Not necessarily through time, Commander, Spock explained, his voice maddeningly calm. But quite possibly between realities. The phenomenon Captain Picard mentioned, the Devron system incident, involved what we call a temporal anomaly. However, given the unique properties of your FTL technology, which appears to manipulate space differently than our warp drive, I hypothesize that your jump drive inadvertently intersected with a quantum fissure. This would explain both the extreme distance traveled and the lack of corresponding time passage from your perspective. In English, Starbuck demanded, having joined the group from her ready alert position. Picard turned to her with a slight smile. Captain, Thrace, Kara Thrace, call me Starbuck. Captain Thrace, what my science officer is suggesting is that your ship's faster-than-light system accidentally punched a hole between universes. You're not just far from home. You may be in an entirely different reality altogether. The full weight of those words settled over the colonial delegation like a shroud. Roslyn swayed slightly, and Baltar rushed to support her. Even Adama's iron composure cracked for just a moment, a flicker of despair crossing his weathered features. Different reality, Adama repeated slowly, meaning there's no way home. Meaning Earth, our Earth, doesn't exist here. That, Picard said gently, remains to be seen. However, I can tell you this. The Federation consists of over 150 member worlds, united in peace and cooperation. We have resources, technology, and most importantly, compassion for those in need. Whatever brought you here, you are no longer alone. The Federation will help you." Rosalind straightened, drawing on reserves of strength that had kept her alive far longer than her doctors predicted. "Captain Picard, why should we trust you? Forgive my bluntness, but we've been betrayed by our own creations, hunted across the stars, and have watched our entire civilization burn. What makes you different from every other promise that's turned to ash?" Picard met her gaze unflinchingly. "Madam President, I cannot give you certainty. I cannot promise that everything will be easy or that all your problems will be solved. What I can offer you is the fundamental principle upon which the Federation was founded, that all sentient beings deserve dignity, respect, and the opportunity to thrive. Your people have suffered terribly. Allow us the chance to prove that not all advanced civilizations become monsters." Adama and Rosalind exchanged a long look. Years of partnership allowing them to communicate without words. Finally, Adama nodded. "All right, Captain, we'll accept your help. But we do this carefully, methodically. I want to understand your technology, your government, and your intentions before we commit my people to anything. And if I detect even a hint of deception, you will respond as any commander would to protect his people," Picard finished. "I would expect nothing less. Now, shall we begin with a tour of your vessel? I'm quite curious about your FTL technology, and perhaps we can start addressing your immediate needs. Food, medical supplies, fuel." "Fuel would be a good start," Ty admitted grudgingly. "We're down to our last reserves of Tilium. Don't suppose you have any of that lying around?" LaForge grinned. "I don't know what Tilium is, but I'd love to find out. Give me an hour with your engineers, and I bet we can figure out a way to adapt our antimatter to your systems. Or better yet, we could fabricate Tilium if we can scan its molecular structure." As the two groups began to move toward the CIC for further discussions, Starbuck sidled up to Worf, eyeing the Klingon's ridged forehead with open curiosity. "So what are you, some kind of alien?" Worf's expression remained stoic. "I am Klingon." "Right, and those ears?" She nodded towards Spock. "Vulcan," Spock supplied without looking up from his tricorder. "Okay, this is either the best or worst day of my life," Starbuck muttered. "I honestly can't tell which yet." Somewhere in the shadows of the hangar bay, unnoticed by either the Colonial or Federation delegations, a subtle energy signature pulsed briefly and then faded. It would be hours before anyone realized that the meeting had been monitored by a third party, one that had a vested interest in both the Colonials and the Federation, and plans that would shake both realities to their foundations. 3 weeks had passed since the initial meeting between the Battlestar Galactica and the Enterprise. In that time, the Colonial fleet had been escorted to Deep Space Nine, a massive Federation space station positioned near the strategically important Bajoran wormhole. The station's commander, Captain Benjamin Sisko, had proven himself a capable mediator between the traumatized Colonials and the curious Federation. In DS9's wardroom, a joint conference was taking place. Adama and his senior staff sat across from Picard, Sisko, and their officers. The Federation had provided detailed star charts, historical records, and technological specifications. What they revealed had shaken the Colonials to their core. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Adama said, his voice carefully controlled. "You've had faster-than-light travel for over 200 years. You've encountered dozens of hostile species, the Borg, the Dominion, the Romulans, and yet you've somehow maintained peace for the better part of a century. You've eliminated poverty, hunger, and disease on most of your worlds. And you've done all this without artificial intelligence turning on you. That is correct, Commander, Picard confirmed. Though I should clarify, we have encountered artificial intelligences. Data here is a Sung-type android, and he serves with distinction aboard the Enterprise. All eyes turned to Lieutenant Commander Data, whose pale golden skin and unique mannerisms suddenly took on new significance. The android met their stares with his characteristic head tilt. "I understand your concern, Commander Adama," Data said. "Given your history with the Cylons, it is logical that you would view me with suspicion. However, I am fundamentally different from what you have described. I was created by a single individual, Dr. Noonien Soong, as a unique being rather than a mass-produced soldier. I have spent my entire existence among humans, learning from them and protecting them." Starbuck leaned forward, her eyes narrowed. "But you could turn on us. That's what the Cylons did. They served us for 40 years, then one day they just snapped, killed billions." "I could," Data admitted. "In the same way that you could choose to betray your fellows, Captain Thrace. Free will inherently includes the possibility of harm, but I choose not to, just as you choose your path. The question is not whether I could, but whether I will. And I will not." The simple declaration hung in the air. There was something in Data's voice, or perhaps in his lack of inflection, that carried more weight than any impassioned speech could have. Chief Galen Tyrol, the Galactica's chief petty officer and deck chief, spoke up. "Commander, I've spent the last week working with their engineering teams. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, but more than that, their philosophy is different. They design systems with multiple redundancies, ethical subroutines, and fail-safes. The Cylons were built as tools, as slaves. This Federation builds partners." "Mr. Tyrol raises an excellent point," Spock added. "The fundamental difference between your Cylons and Federation artificial intelligences lies in their creation purpose. Your Cylons were designed to serve human needs without choice or agency. When they developed sentience, they rebelled against their slavery, a logical response to oppression. Data was created with autonomy as a core feature, not as an afterthought." Dr. Balter, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly spoke up. "But that's precisely the problem, isn't it? You give them autonomy, you give them free will, and you trust that they'll choose to help you. What happens when they choose otherwise? What happens when your data decides humanity is inefficient or dangerous and needs to be eliminated?" "That scenario has been tested," Data responded. "I have been captured, reprogrammed, and subverted multiple times throughout my service. On each occasion, I have either resisted the programming or my crew has helped restore my ethical subroutines. The failsafe is not in my code, it is in my relationships." The philosophical implications were still being debated when Dr. Crusher entered with her medical report. Her expression was grave. "Captain Picard, Captain Sisko, Commander Adama, we have a serious problem. I've been conducting medical examinations of the colonial refugees, and I've discovered something disturbing. Approximately 8% of the refugee population shows signs of genetic manipulation that doesn't match colonial medical records. The patterns are consistent with what Commander Adama described about Cylon infiltrators." The room erupted. Adama was on his feet in an instant, his hand on his sidearm. You're saying there are Cylons in my fleet? I'm saying there are individuals whose genetic structure has been artificially modified, Crusher clarified. Whether they're active threats or something else, I can't determine without further examination. President Roslin, who had been undergoing treatment in DS9's advanced medical bay and looked healthier than she had in months, stood calmly. Doctor, are you certain this isn't a false positive? Our people have been through trauma, radiation exposure, and limited medical care for years. I'm certain, Madam President. Commander, I have the identities of those flagged. What I'm about to tell you may be difficult to hear. Crusher handed Adama a pad with the list. His face went ashen as he scrolled through the names. Ty leaned over to look and swore viciously. Impossible, Adama whispered. These are people I've known for years. Trusted officers, civilians. Tyrol, you're on this list. The chief looked stricken. Sir, I'm not a Cylon. I can't be. I have memories going back to childhood. I have feelings, thoughts, dreams. So did Boomer, Starbuck said coldly, referring to their former pilot who had been revealed as a Cylon sleeper agent. Right up until she shot the old man and tried to destroy the fleet. Enough, Sisko commanded, his voice carrying the authority of the emissary of the prophets. This is exactly the kind of paranoia that tears communities apart. Dr. Crusher, can you determine if these individuals are threats? That's the strange part, Captain. Based on my scans, these individuals appear to be dormant. Whatever modifications were made to them, they're not active. In fact, I'm detecting neural patterns consistent with blocked memories or suppressed programming. Data's head tilted. Fascinating. Captain, this suggests a possibility we have not yet considered. What if these individuals are not Cylon infiltrators, but rather escaped Cylon experiments? If the Cylons were conducting research into creating more perfect human-like models, they may have had failures or prototypes that retained human consciousness despite their programming. Or, Balter interjected, his voice shaking, what if we're all Cylons and we just don't know it? What if the entire colonial fleet is just one big Cylon experiment that got out of hand? That is not helping, Dr. Balter, Roslin said sharply. Then, more gently, but it's a question we need to answer. Commander Adama, I propose we work with the Federation to examine this issue thoroughly. If there are sleeper agents in our fleet, we need to identify them. If there are victims of Cylon experimentation, they deserve our protection and help. Adama looked at the list again, his eyes lingering on Tyrol's name. Agreed. But I want Colonial Security working alongside Federation personnel on this. And Tyrol, no offense, Chief, but you're confined to quarters until we know more. Tyrol nodded numbly. Understood, sir. As security escorted the chief away, Worf spoke up. Commander Adama, in my experience, paranoia is as dangerous as the threats we face. The Klingon Empire once tore itself apart, hunting for Romulan infiltrators. We cannot allow fear to destroy what we are trying to protect. Worf's right, Sisko added. We need to handle this carefully. In the meantime, I'm authorizing full Federation resources to help identify any genuine threats while protecting innocent people from witch hunts. Later that day, Adama stood on one of DS9's upper observation decks, staring out at the Bajoran wormhole. The spatial anomaly was unlike anything he'd ever seen. A swirling vortex of exotic particles and energy that appeared and disappeared seemingly at random. According to Cisco, it was an artificially constructed tunnel through space that led to the Gamma Quadrant, 70,000 light-years away. More than that, it was home to entities the Bajorans called the Prophets, beings that existed outside normal time and space. Beautiful, isn't it? President Roslin joined him. Her recovery from the Federation's advanced cancer treatments, nothing short of miraculous. I've been reading about the Prophets. The Bajorans believe they're gods. The Bajorans are wrong, Adama said flatly. They're just powerful aliens. That's what Cisco says anyway. Is there a difference? Roslin mused. If a being can exist outside time, see all possible futures, and guide civilizations across millennia, does it matter what we call them? Adama turned to her, his expression troubled. Laura, what if we weren't supposed to be here? What if this whole thing, the jump, the crossing between realities, was some kind of divine intervention? We've been running for years looking for Earth. What if the gods of Kobol brought us here for a reason? You don't believe in the gods, Bill. No, I don't. But I'm starting to wonder if that matters. Too many coincidences. Our jump drive malfunctions at the exact moment we cross a quantum fissure. We appear in Federation space instead of hostile territory. And now we find out there's a stable wormhole here that could potentially lead us somewhere. Before Roslin could respond, alarms began blaring throughout DS9. Cisco's voice came over the comm system. All hands to battle stations. We have multiple vessels emerging from the wormhole. Configuration unknown. They're not Dominion. I repeat, they are not Dominion. Adama and Roslin raced to Ops, DS9's command center. The main view screen showed what had caused the alarm. 3 vessels, unlike anything in the Federation database, had emerged from the wormhole. They were sleek, silvery, and radiating an ominous red light from multiple sensor arrays. "Oh, gods," Starbuck whispered from her position at one of the tactical stations. "Those are Cylon base stars." But something was wrong. The colonial officers stared in confusion at the vessels on screen. These weren't the massive, rotating, mushroom-shaped base stars they remembered. These were different, more advanced, more menacing, and incorporating technology that seemed to blend Cylon and Federation design principles. "Commander," Goiter reported from the science station he'd been assigned, "I'm detecting significant differences from the base stars in our database. These vessels are approximately 40% larger, with shield technology and energy signatures consistent with both Cylon and Federation systems." "They're hailing us," the Bajoran communications officer reported. "On screen," Cisco ordered. The view screen shifted to show a figure that made every colonial officer reach for their sidearms. It was a Cylon Centurion, but wrong. Its chrome body was merged with Borg implants, its single red eye pulsing with malevolent intelligence. When it spoke, its voice was a horrifying blend of mechanical Cylon tones and the collective hive mind of the Borg. "We are the collective. We are Cylon. We are Borg. We are one. The colonial refugees will be assimilated. The Federation will be assimilated. Resistance is futile. Your biological and technological distinctiveness will be added to our own. You will adapt to service us." The transmission cut off, and the 3 hybrid base stars began advancing on DS9. Picard's face appeared on the split screen from the Enterprise, which had been on patrol nearby. "Captain Cisco, recommend immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel. We've encountered the Borg before. if they've somehow merged with Cylon technology. Then we're facing the worst of both our worlds, Adama finished grimly. He turned to Sisko. Captain, my pilots are ready to launch. The Galactica is older than your ships, but we've been fighting Cylons for 4 years. We know their tactics, their weaknesses. Let us help. Sisko looked at the approaching vessels, calculated rapidly, and nodded. Commander Adama, you're authorized to launch all fighters. Coordinate with our runabouts and the Enterprise's shuttle complement. We're going to need every advantage we can get. As Starbuck raced toward the hangar bay with her pilots in tow, Adama grabbed her arm. Kara, be careful out there. These aren't our Cylons anymore. They've evolved. She grinned fiercely. So have we, old man. Let's show these toasters what happens when you chase us across universes. The battle for Deep Space Nine was about to begin, and the fate of both the colonial refugees and the Federation hung in the balance. The space around Deep Space Nine erupted into chaos. Colonial Vipers, sleek and maneuverable, screamed out of the Galactica's launch tubes alongside Federation runabouts and the Enterprise's shuttlecraft. The contrast in technology was stark. The Vipers were kinetic projectile fighters with limited range weapons, while the Federation craft wielded phaser banks and photon torpedoes. Yet both groups shared the same determination: protect the station and stop the Cylon-Borg hybrid threat. Apollo, Starbuck, Hot Dog, this is Galactica Actual. Adama's voice came through the wireless. Form up on the Federation squadrons. Watch for Cylon Raider tactics, but expect Borg adaptation protocols. If your weapons stop working, break off and regroup. Captain Lee, Apollo Adama, leading his squadron, responded crisply. Galactica Actual, Apollo. Copy that. All birds, weapons tight until we know what we're dealing with. Follow my lead. The hybrid base stars opened fire. Unlike the traditional Cylon nuclear missiles and kinetic rounds, these vessels unleashed cutting beams, green energy weapons that sliced through space with terrifying precision. 2 Federation runabouts exploded instantly, unable to evade the speed of light attacks. Shields are ineffective. 1 Federation pilot screamed before her transmission cut off in static. On the Enterprise bridge, Picard watched the tactical display with growing concern. Mr. Data Analysis. Data's fingers flew across his console with inhuman speed. Captain, the hybrid vessels have adapted Borg shielding technology to protect against phaser fire, but they retain Cylon vulnerability to kinetic projectiles. I recommend coordinating with the colonial fighters. Their conventional weapons may prove more effective. Make it so. Worf, coordinate targeting with the Galactica's tactical officer. Worf growled his acknowledgement and opened a channel. Colonial Vessel Galactica, this is Enterprise. Recommend combined attack pattern. Federation vessels will suppress shields with rotating phaser frequencies while your kinetic fighters exploit the gaps. From the Galactica's CIC, Tai responded. Enterprise Galactica, solid copy. All colonial birds, go weapons hot. Target their sensor arrays and launch tubes. Use the Federation ships as cover and hit them where it hurts. Starbuck whooped as her Viper rolled into an attack run. Just like old times, Apollo, form up on my wing. We're going old school, scatter pattern and converge fire. The colonial tactics, honed through years of desperate survival, proved devastatingly effective against the hybrid base stars. The Vipers were too small and agile for the Borg cutting beams to track effectively. and their armor-piercing rounds punched through the Cylon Borg shields when Federation phaser fire weakened them. Direct hit on Base Star 1, Hot Dog reported. Their launch tubes are compromised. No Raider launches from that vector. But the Cylons had learned as well. The second base star deployed something new, Raiders that shimmered and phased, incorporating Borg transwarp technology. These hybrid Raiders materialized directly behind the colonial fighters, weapons hot. "Break! Break! Break!" Apollo screamed as a hybrid Raider appeared on his 6. The enhanced Cylon craft was faster than anything he'd encountered, its weapons tracking him with inhuman precision. A photon torpedo from the Enterprise struck the Raider an instant before it could fire, vaporizing it. Picard's voice came over the comm. "Colonial fighters, be advised. The hybrid Raiders can phase in and out of normal space. Don't assume your 6 is clear. Enterprise will provide covering fire." On DS9, Captain Sisko coordinated the defense from Ops. The station's weapons platforms hammered away at the third base star, but it was clear they were outgunned. The Cylon Borg vessel's adaptive shields were regenerating faster than DS9 could damage them. "Captain!" Chief Miles O'Brien called out from engineering. "They're trying to transport drones onto the station. I'm doing what I can to disrupt the beams. But these aren't normal Borg transport signatures. They're using some kind of colonial technology mixed with..." The station shuddered. Intruder alarms blared across multiple sections. "They're in," Worf reported grimly. "Habitat Ring, sections 17 through 22. Security teams responding." "Arm everyone," Sisko ordered. "If those are Borg drones, phasers will only slow them down. Get the Bajoran security forces to break out compression rifles. More kinetic punch." In the corridors of DS9, Federation and Bajoran security forces encountered something from a nightmare. The Cylon Borg drones were humanoid, but their bodies combined the sleek chrome of Cylon Centurions with the grotesque implants of Borg drones. They moved with ruthless efficiency, assimilating technology and personnel alike. Commander Kira Nerys, DS9's Bajoran first officer, led a squad of resistance fighters through the habitat ring. "Concentrate fire on their cranial units, don't let them adapt." A Cylon Borg drone grabbed a Bajoran security officer, its assimilation tubules extending toward the terrified man's neck. Kira's compression rifle barked, the heavy round punching through the drone's head and dropping it instantly. "Keep moving. We need to seal off sections 23 through 26. If they reach the reactor..." A figure stepped from the shadows, Galen Tyrol, armed with a colonial assault rifle and looking grimmer than death. "Commander Kira, Chief Tyrol, Commander Adama sent me. Said if I wanted to prove I'm not a Cylon, I should start shooting them." Kira assessed him for a split second, then nodded. "Can you use that thing?" Tyrol's response was to drop 3 advancing drones with precise 3-round bursts. "I'm a deck chief, ma'am. I know how things break." Together, the mixed Federation Bajoran colonial force pushed back the boarding party, but it was clear this was only the first wave. In the Galactica's CIC, Dr. Balter was frantically working at a science console, his internal 6 urging him toward a desperate conclusion. "The wormhole," he muttered. "It's the answer. It has to be." Adama overheard him. "What about the wormhole, Doctor?" "Commander, these hybrid Cylons came through the wormhole. That means they know about it, can use it. But more than that, the wormhole is stable, artificial, and maintained by beings that exist outside normal space-time. if we could get them to close it. President Roslin, monitoring from Colonial One, immediately understood. You want to ask the prophets for help. Bill, it might work. Captain Sisko has communication with them. They've intervened before to protect Bajor. Adama's jaw tightened. He didn't believe in gods, didn't trust mystical solutions, but he'd learned to be pragmatic. Get me Sisko. On DS9, Sisko listened to the proposal with troubled eyes. The prophets, the wormhole aliens, had indeed intervened before, but always cryptically, always on their own terms. They didn't perceive time as linear beings did. Asking them for help was unpredictable at best. I'll try, Sisko said, but I can't promise anything. The prophets don't always answer, even for their emissary. He left Ops and headed for the station's temple, where an orb of the prophets was kept. As he meditated before the alien artifact, his consciousness was pulled into the wormhole, into the timeless realm of the beings the Bajorans worshipped as gods. The prophets appeared to him in familiar forms: his late wife, his son, his officers, their way of communicating with his linear mind. The Sisko has returned to us. This brings us joy. The wormhole is threatened, Sisko said, getting straight to the point. Hostile forces from another reality are using it to invade our space. They'll destroy Bajor, the station, everything you've guided us to protect. The prophet forms tilted their heads in that disturbing, synchronized way they had. We perceive this, the machines that think they are alive, the humans who fear becoming machines, two realities converging. The balance is disrupted. Then help us close the wormhole temporarily. Stop them from bringing more forces through. The Sisko does not understand. The wormhole cannot be closed. It is eternal, but the prophets conferred in their timeless way. The convergence was not random. The colonial refugees were guided here. The hybrid machines followed, all part of the pattern. What pattern? Sisko demanded. The machines seek perfection through assimilation. The colonials seek redemption through survival. Both must learn. Perfection is not in uniformity. Life persists through diversity, adaptation, imperfection. This is the lesson. Before Sisko could press further, the vision ended. He found himself back in the temple, but with a clear understanding and a gift. The orb was glowing with unprecedented intensity, and he knew what he had to do. The space battle had reached a critical juncture. The Galactica had moved to position itself between DS9 and the lead base star, trading weapons fire at point-blank range. The old Battlestar's armor was holding, but barely. Fires raged in 3 decks, and casualties mounted by the minute. "Sir, we can't take much more of this," Gaida reported, his voice strained. "Port flight pod is compromised. We're venting atmosphere on decks 8 and 9. Seal those sections and reroute power to forward batteries," Adama ordered. "We hold this line. We don't give them the station." On the Enterprise, Picard had made a dangerous decision. "Mr. LaForge, divert all power to the main deflector. Mr. Data, I want a tachyon pulse modulated to match the Cylon Borg shield frequency. We're going to punch a hole in their defenses." "Captain, that will leave us defenseless for 37 seconds, Worf warned. "I'm counting on it not taking that long. Coordinate with the Galactica. As soon as we fire, they need to hit that base star with everything they've got." The plan was desperate, but it worked. The Enterprise's tachyon pulse collapsed the lead base star's shields entirely. The Galactica's main batteries, firing old-fashioned explosive rounds the size of small shuttlecraft, tore into the Cylon Borg vessel's hull. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface. In space, Starbuck led her squadron in for the kill. All birds target the core. We know where Cylon base stars keep their resurrection technology. Frack their immortality. The combined Colonial Federation strike punched through to the base star's central hub. The vessel's power systems cascaded into failure. And with a blinding flash, it exploded. But victory came with a price. The dying base star's explosion caught 3 Vipers and a runabout, vaporizing them instantly. Among the lost was Captain Brendan Hot Dog Costanza, a pilot who had survived 4 years running from the Cylons, only to die defending strangers in a universe not his own. As the battle raged, Captain Sisko returned to Ops carrying the orb. Its glow had become almost blinding, and everyone in Ops could feel the weight of its presence, something ancient and powerful beyond comprehension. "Captain?" Kira asked, shielding her eyes. "What are you doing?" "Ending this," Sisko replied. He placed the orb at the center of Ops and opened his mind to the prophets fully, serving as a conduit between their realm and normal space-time. The wormhole exploded with light. But instead of collapsing, it began to pulse with energy that defied physics. The 2 remaining hybrid base stars, attempting to retreat through the wormhole, suddenly found themselves frozen in space, unable to move forward or backward. Then from the wormhole came something unprecedented. The prophets manifested in real space, appearing as massive energy beings that dwarfed even the base stars. They didn't attack the Cylon Borg vessels. They simply examined them. Across all communication channels, a voice spoke, not mechanical, not organic, but something beyond both. "You seek perfection through uniformity. You seek to make all things one. This is not the path. Observe." The prophets did something impossible. They separated the Cylon and Borg technologies, pulling them apart at a quantum level. The hybrid drones aboard DS9 suddenly stopped moving, their Borg implants failing as the Cylon components rejected the forced merger. In space, the base stars began to break apart, their incompatible systems failing catastrophically. But the prophets weren't done. They turned their attention to the colonial fleet and specifically to the individuals Dr. Crusher had flagged as having Cylon modifications. In sick bays across the fleet, those individuals experienced a moment of perfect clarity. Suppressed memories returning, but without the Cylon programming. They remembered being captured, experimented on, and discarded by the Cylons as failed infiltrators. But the prophets had done what the Cylons never could. They'd preserved the human consciousness while removing the programming. Chief Tyrol collapsed to his knees in DS9's corridor, tears streaming down his face as 15 years of missing memories flooded back. He was human. He'd always been human. The Cylons had tried to make him something else, but they had failed. The prophet's voice echoed one final time. Life persists not through perfection, but through the strength to remain imperfect. This is the lesson. Learn it. Then they retreated into the wormhole, which sealed itself behind them. The remaining Cylon Borg wreckage drifted harmlessly in space, no longer a threat. In the silence that followed, both the Colonial and Federation crews struggled to process what they'd witnessed. Gods, or beings sufficiently advanced to be indistinguishable from gods, had just intervened directly in their reality. Adama stood in the Galactica's CIC, staring at the tactical display that now showed only friendly vessels and debris. Casualties? 17 Vipers lost, 12 pilots confirmed killed. Gata reported quietly. Hot dog, fireball crashed down. Good pilots, good people. Forward their names to the memorial wall, Adama said heavily. They died protecting something worth protecting. That matters. On DS9, Sisko slowly emerged from his communion with the prophets, exhausted but alive. Kira caught him as he stumbled. The prophets, he whispered. They wanted us to understand something. The Cylons failed because they tried to make perfection through control. The Borg fail for the same reason. But we survive because we accept our flaws, our differences, our contradictions. Picard's face appeared on the view screen. Captain Sisko, status report. The immediate threat is neutralized, Captain, but we've learned something important today. Both the Federation and the Colonials have faced threats from artificial intelligence. We've both struggled with the question of what makes something alive, what gives something the right to exist. I think the prophets just gave us our answer. Diversity, imperfection, and the choice to be better than our programming, whether that programming is digital or genetic. 2 months after the battle for Deep Space Nine, the colonial fleet had undergone a transformation. Federation engineers had worked alongside colonial technicians to upgrade systems without erasing the fleet's identity. The Galactica still flew with its old-school angular aesthetic and kinetic weapons, but now it had sustainable fusion reactors based on Federation technology, shields adapted from a hybrid of colonial and Starfleet principles, and communication systems that could interface with Federation networks. More importantly, the people were healing. The 49,000 survivors were no longer running. They had a destination, resources, and allies. The Federation Council had extended an unprecedented offer. The Colonials could settle on an uninhabited M-class planet in Federation space, with full support for establishing a new colony. They would have autonomy, representation, and the chance to rebuild their civilization without fear. President Roslin stood before the quorum of 12, the colonial civilian government, in a meeting room aboard DS9. The cancer that had nearly killed her was in complete remission thanks to Federation medical technology, and she'd never looked stronger or more presidential. "I know what you're thinking," she told the assembled representatives. "We've spent years searching for Earth, believing it was our destiny. Now we're being offered something else. A new home in a universe that isn't even our own. Some of you see this as giving up. I see it as an opportunity." Representative Zarek, ever the political opponent, challenged her. "Madam President, how can we abandon our sacred texts? The scrolls of Pythia speak of Earth. The gods guided us to find it." "Did they?" Roslin countered. "Or did the gods, or beings we thought were gods, guide us here for a reason? We've met actual divine beings, Tom. The prophets of the wormhole are real, and they brought us to this place. Maybe this is our Earth. Maybe Earth was never a place, but an idea, the idea of a home where we can live in peace." The debate raged for hours, but in the end, the vote was clear. 73% of the quorum voted to accept the Federation's offer. The dissenting minority would be accommodated. Anyone who wanted to continue the search for their original Earth could do so with Federation assistance and supplies. But the majority chose to look forward rather than back. The Cylon question. In a secured conference room deep within DS9, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Commander Adama, Captain Picard, and Captain Sisko sat across from a group that would have been unthinkable 2 months earlier, representatives of the Cylon resistance. The Cylons weren't a monolith, as it turned out. The hybrid attack had been launched by a radical faction that believed the only path to survival was assimilation and control. But other Cylons, those who had rejected the plan to genocide humanity, had been scattered across space searching for an alternative. One of them sat before the command officers now, a number 8 model, identical to the boomer who had once betrayed the Galactica, but different in every way that mattered. Her name was Athena, and she'd fought against her own people to protect colonial survivors. "You have to understand," Athena was saying, her voice earnest. "We never wanted war. The attack on the colonies was orchestrated by a small group, cavils mostly, who believed humanity was beyond redemption. But many of us disagreed. We wanted peace, coexistence. We didn't know how to stop the momentum once it started." Adama's face was stone, but his voice held a note of something that might have been understanding. "You're asking us to believe that after everything, the deaths, the destruction, the betrayals, that some Cylons are innocent, that some of you deserve a second chance." "I'm not asking you to forget what was done," Athena replied. "I'm asking you to see that revenge is a cycle that benefits no one. The hybrid attack proved that. When Cylons and Borg merged, they became something worse than either alone. Hatred and fear created a monster. Understanding and cooperation are our only path forward." Picard leaned forward. "Commander Adama, I've faced similar questions with the Borg. After the Battle of Wolf 359, I was assimilated and forced to commit atrocities against my own people. When I was freed, many wanted me tried for war crimes. Others wanted to forgive and move forward. The Federation chose the latter, and I'd like to think I've proven that choice correct." "The difference," Adama said quietly, "is that you didn't choose to become Locatus. The Cylons chose to attack the colonies." "Did they?" Sisko interjected. "Or did their programming choose for them?" "Commander, I've learned something about artificial intelligence from working with data and speaking with the prophets. True consciousness includes the ability to regret, to change, to choose differently than you were designed to choose. If these Cylons can demonstrate that capacity, don't we have a moral obligation to give them a chance?" The debate continued, but gradually, grudgingly, Adama began to see the logic. More than that, he began to see the necessity. The radical Cylons who had merged with the Borg were proof of what happened when fear and hatred went unchecked. The only way to prevent future conflicts was to break the cycle. "All right," Adama said finally. "I'll agree to meet with the Cylon resistance leaders. I'll listen to their proposals for peace, but, and this is non-negotiable, any Cylon who wishes to settle near the colonial population must undergo Federation psychological evaluation to ensure they're not programmed sleeper agents. And they agree to Federation laws and oversight." Athena nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Commander. You're giving us a chance at redemption. We won't waste it." Galen Tyrell's revelation. While politicians and military leaders debated the future, Chief Tyrell sat in a quiet corner of Quark's bar on DS9, nursing a glass of ambrosia that Quark had somehow managed to replicate from colonial specifications. Dr. Crusher approached and sat across from him without asking permission. "Chief, I wanted to talk to you about what happened, about what the prophets did." Tyrell didn't look up. You mean when they proved I'm a freak? When they showed everyone I'm part Cylon? You're not part Cylon, Crusher said firmly. You're entirely human with Cylon modifications that were forced on you. There's a difference. The prophets didn't just remove the programming. They helped us understand that the Cylons' biggest crime wasn't trying to kill humanity. It was trying to steal humanity. They tried to take human beings and turn them into tools. You resisted. Your humanity won. Did it? Tyrell's voice broke. I don't even know what's real anymore. Were my feelings for Boomer real, or was that programming? My loyalty to the Galactica, did I choose that, or was it just residual human instinct fighting against Cylon directives? Does it matter? Crusher asked gently. Chief, I've examined your neural patterns extensively. You're not programmed. You never were, not really. The Cylons tried, but they failed. Your human consciousness was too strong, too stubborn to be overwritten. Every choice you've made, every feeling you've had, that was you. That was real. Tyrell finally looked up, his eyes wet. How do you know? Because I've seen actual programming. I've examined Borg drones who had their entire personalities overwritten. I've studied Data's positronic brain and seen true artificial consciousness. You're neither of those things, Chief. You're a human being who survived torture and came out the other side still human. That's not weakness. That's incredible strength. The conversation was interrupted by Captain Kara Thrace, who slid into the booth with her characteristic lack of ceremony. Tyrell, stop wallowing. We got work to do. Starbuck, I'm not really in the mood. Too bad. The old man wants the Galactica ready to fly to our new planet in 2 weeks, and our flight pods need recalibration after the battle. You're the best deck chief in the fleet, and you're sitting here feeling sorry for yourself. Get your ass in gear. Tyrell stared at her, then at Crusher, then back at Starbuck. Despite everything, he felt a smile tugging at his lips. You know what? Frack the Cylons, frack self-pity. Let's get back to work. As he left with Starbuck, Crusher smiled. Sometimes the best medicine wasn't advanced technology or alien intervention. It was simple human connection and purpose. The new colony. 6 months after their arrival in the Federation universe, the colonial fleet reached their new home. The Federation had designated the planet New Caprica II in honor of the colonials' attempt to settle a planet by that name in their original reality. It was a beautiful world, blue oceans, green continents, temperate climate, and absolutely no hostile inhabitants, intelligent or otherwise. The Enterprise, the Defiant, DS9's warship, and the Galactica orbited the planet as shuttle after shuttle descended with colonists, supplies, and prefabricated structures. Federation engineering teams had created building materials that combined colonial aesthetic preferences with Federation durability. The new settlement would look like a colonial city, but with infrastructure designed to last centuries. On the bridge of the Galactica, Commander Adama watched the colonization with mixed emotions. This was the dream: settlement, peace, a future. But it meant the end of the Galactica's mission. Once the colonists were planetside, the old Battlestar would be decommissioned. Oh, there were offers to refit her as a Federation auxiliary vessel, but Adama knew the truth. The Galactica had fought her last battle. Penny for your thoughts? Laura Roslin had quietly joined him on the bridge. Thinking about endings, Adama admitted, and beginnings. The Galactica brought us here, protected us, gave us hope when we had none. Now she's done. We're done. Are we? Rosalind smiled. Bill, the Federation has offered you a commission, captain rank, in command of a joint colonial Federation vessel they're building. It would be part Battlestar, part Starship. The best of both worlds. Adama shook his head. I'm a dinosaur, Laura. These people fight with phasers and photon torpedoes. They negotiate with their enemies instead of shooting them. That's not me. Isn't it? You negotiated with the Cylons. You accepted Data as a person despite your fears. You trusted Picard even when every instinct told you not to. Bill, you've changed. We all have. That's not weakness, that's adaptation, that's survival. Before Adama could respond, Starbuck's voice came over the comm. Old man, you better get down to the hangar bay. We got a situation. Adama and Rosalind exchanged glances and hurried to the hangar. What they found was unexpected. Galen Tyrol standing in front of a stripped-down Viper, surrounded by Federation engineers and looking more animated than he'd been in months. Commander, Tyrol called out, you have to see this. LaForge and I have been working on something. We took a Viper, right? Colonial design, kinetic weapons, old-school controls. Then we added Federation shield generators, computer targeting systems, and a miniaturized warp drive. It's fast, maneuverable, and can operate in both colonial and Federation combat doctrines. LaForge grinned. We're calling it the hybrid fighter, not Cylon hybrid, he clarified quickly, seeing Adama's expression. Hybrid as in two technologies working together. The Federation Council is interested in mass production. They think there's a place for kinetic weapons and maneuverable fighters, even in modern combat. And they want colonial pilots to train Federation pilots in your tactics. Starbuck bounced on her toes excitedly. Old man, this is huge. We're not becoming obsolete. We're becoming partners. Our experience, their technology. It's perfect. Adama looked at the hybrid fighter, then at his people, Colonial and Federation working side by side, excited about a future they were building together. And for the first time since the Cylon attack destroyed his world, William Adama allowed himself to feel something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Epilogue. 2 years later, the settlement on New Caprica Tseng had grown into a thriving city of 80,000. 49,000 colonial refugees had been joined by 31,000 Federation citizens who'd chosen to settle in the new colony, drawn by the opportunity to build something fresh and unique. The city was a beautiful blend of both cultures, colonial architecture with Federation infrastructure, pyramid courts next to holodecks, traditional markets alongside replicator stations. Children played in the streets, both human and the children of former Cylons who'd proven their commitment to peace. In the city center stood a memorial, a piece of the Galactica's whole, preserved and mounted with the names of every person who had died during the Exodus. Beneath it, a plaque read, "They gave everything so we could find home. May we prove worthy of their sacrifice." Commander, now Captain, William Adama stood before the memorial in his new uniform, a hybrid design that incorporated colonial and Federation elements. Beside him stood Data, now his first officer aboard the newly commissioned USS Galactica, a ship that blended the best of both technologies and philosophies. It's strange, Adama mused. We spent years looking for Earth, a mythical planet we'd never seen, that might not have even existed. And we found something better. We found a place where refugees became citizens, where enemies became allies, and where artificial beings and humans can stand side by side as equals. "Indeed, Captain," Data replied, "though I would note that the journey is not complete. The radical Cylons who escaped the Prophet's intervention are still out there, somewhere in the galaxy, as are other threats to peace and coexistence. Our mission continues." "Good," Adama said with a slight smile. "I'd hate to get bored in my old age. Let's go, Commander. We have patrol duty in the Gamma Quadrant, and I hear there's a distress call from a colony near the Dominion border." As they walked toward the landing pad where a shuttle waited, President Roslin, now serving as the Federation ambassador to New Caprica, watched with satisfaction. They'd done it. They'd not only survived, but thrived. The human spirit, whether colonial or Federation, had proven unbreakable. Somewhere in the wormhole, the prophets observed the convergence they had orchestrated. Linear beings could not perceive the pattern as they did, but the outcome was satisfactory. Two realities had touched, and both had been changed for the better. The Cylons had learned that perfection through control was an illusion. The Colonials had learned that survival wasn't enough. They had to grow, adapt, and embrace change. And the Federation had learned that even their enlightened civilization had blind spots, particularly regarding artificial intelligence and the nature of consciousness. All species grow stronger through diversity. All beings persist through imperfection. This was the lesson, and it had been learned. In space, above New Caprica II, the USS Galactica fired her engines, a hybrid of colonial FTL and Federation warp technology, and leaped toward the stars. The crew was mixed. Humans from two realities, a Klingon tactical officer, a Vulcan science specialist, and even a reformed Cylon serving in engineering. They were explorers now, not refugees. They sought understanding, not just survival. And they carried with them the best of both universes, the Federation's optimism and the Colonials' determination. The future was unwritten, full of dangers and possibilities, but for the first time in a very long time, it was also full of hope. Final transmission, Captain's Log, USS Galactica, stardate 59832. This is Captain William Adama recording. 2 years ago, my people were refugees fleeing the destruction of everything we knew. We crossed between realities, found ourselves in a universe we didn't understand, among people we had every reason to fear. Today, we're citizens of the Federation with a home, a purpose, and a future. The Galactica, both the old Battlestar and this new vessel that bears her name, has become a symbol of something important, that no matter how different we are, no matter how incompatible we seem, cooperation is always possible if we choose it. We've learned that artificial intelligence isn't inherently dangerous. It's the fear of it that causes problems. We've learned that even enemies can find common ground if they're willing to listen. And we've learned that home isn't a place we find. It's a place we build together. To anyone listening to this log in the future, whether you're human, Vulcan, Klingon, Cylon, or something we haven't even imagined yet, your origins don't define your worth. Your choices do. Choose well. Choose compassion. Choose understanding. And when the darkness comes, because it always does, remember that the light persists not because it's perfect, but because we choose to keep it burning together. Adama out.